All right, it looks like we're ready to get started. Thank you everyone for joining me. I'm excited to peek behind the curtain at Tier Zero. It's a technology that's moving at a pace like nothing I've ever seen. So I think it could be urgent to get on the ground floor, which frankly, with technology, it's always getting faster, bigger, more important in our world. And we believe this could be the largest trend ever. One that could fundamentally alter the way we live. So my goal is simple. I want to take those vague feelings you're probably beginning to notice that something new and big is brewing and combine it with our exhaustive research so you can have a picture that's clear as day just how big Tier Zero could be and how you can take action today, whether you're an experienced investor or just starting out. Obviously, your time is valuable. You're dedicating that time and attention to be here today. So I'm doing my best to pack this webinar with valuable and timely information. So if you stay tuned, you'll not only discover what is Tier Zero and why is this technology so rapidly taking off. Second, learn about a company that's suddenly become red hot with its name and ticker symbol revealed to you that as I'm filming this is up 93% since I first glimpsed its Tier Zero technology in a closed door meeting last summer. And finally, third, how you can begin taking action on 9 incredible Tier Zero stocks today. Simply put, the technology behind Tier Zero is some of the most advanced in human history. It's been snowballing over the past about 18 months, but it's really gotten interesting in just the past 6. I've got a graph of the progress I'm going to show you in a couple minutes. It truly made my jaw drop, and this is why we want to present this information right now. We feel like this moment is a bit like someone explaining the power of the internet mere months before AOL launched. Today, you can easily imagine the profit potential of understanding what was to come in that early time before the internet was a buzzword. There's simply no time to waste, but I must remind you, we're going to do as much as possible to remove complexity, to make Tier Zero easy to understand, but this does boil down to advanced technology. We've been lucky enough to have access to in-the-know CEOs, technical experts, and technology insiders to get an inside scoop that would be very difficult to find anywhere else. Quite frankly, this technology is so new, there hasn't been time to write books on the most recent advancements. So I'd like for you to do me a favor. I want to make sure that you clear your office, your desk, wherever you're at of any distractions. Grab a pen and some spare paper to take notes. It's hard to do, I know, but if you turn off the email, put your cell phones on vibrate, and just focus on this, I believe you'll get more out of this. I promise. The overall experience will be better. I'm dead set on giving you my very best, so I promise it'll be worth your time. With that, let's get started. So you should see a picture that just pulled up. It's pretty unremarkable on the surface, right? Just me and an executive from a leading company in the Tier Zero space. But it's in this room, in this very frame, that we discovered the true power of Tier Zero. It's there in this picture if you look closely enough. And don't worry if you're not seeing anything that looks particularly futuristic. We'll come back to this picture in a few minutes and it all makes sense. So I want to stop here and do a brain teaser for you. Hopefully you still have that pen and paper handy. What is 5.56 billion divided by 3.1 million? Got the answer? Congrats if you do. This kind of math, might be especially difficult for you because most of us no longer do it by hand. I mean, I sure don't. And why should we? A computer can figure it out in a fraction of a second. This is a simple example of what computers are really good at, things like solving math problems. And over the years, they've become fantastically faster. Looking at the slide above, the 5.56 billion figure is the number of transistors on Intel's modern Haswell processor. And the 3.1 million figure is the number of transistors on a state-of-the-art Pentium computer chip from 1993. So the answer to that question on the slide is computers have become 1,793 times more powerful in that brief time. Yet, if computers had become so much more fantastically powerful than anyone could have predicted, why has the kind of technology predicted in shows like The Jetsons more than 50 years ago, why has it never come to pass? Why exactly can't you ask a computer to be your maid, know how to pick up around the house, or seamlessly drive you to work while you relax? The answer is, well, computers have become faster, they haven't necessarily become smarter. Problems that require intuition and problem solving, those are areas computers struggle with. You can't put years of clinical trial data in front of a computer and have it magically find a cure for cancer. If you want to strike it rich painting, you can't show a computer a series of Picasso paintings and expect a computer to create a work of art. And if you want to go somewhere, you can't have a computer drive you while understanding how to move in traffic, avoid pedestrians, and do all the other unexpected things that happen in the street. This is a problem that has baffled the smartest minds in technologies for decades. Computers are becoming so much faster, but their smarts are so narrow. It's only what we tell them to do. So how do we make them smarter? The Tier 0 world is where the limitations of how to make computers more useful, smart, and you could even say Jetsons-like in our world are rapidly solved in a period we believe will take place with truly shocking speed. I mean, looking at this slide, you'll see examples of the shift already in action today. The car on the slide, that's Tesla's new Model 3. You've probably seen all over the news. When Tesla announced it, huge lines formed, and the company reportedly took 325,000 reservations worth some $14 billion. Those are astounding numbers, right? But here's what's really astounding. The Tesla Model 3 comes standard with self-driving features. When it hits, suddenly the roads will be filled with cars driving themselves. You can be certain of that because hundreds of thousands have already been reserved. You also see virtual reality on here. That's been all over the news recently as well. Why is that suddenly so big after decades of failing? And then there's that robot. I took some video of it in March, and well, you'll just have to see it to believe it.
It's been a pleasure to meet you. What are you doing next?
Thank you for your politeness.
What do you dream about at night?
I mean, about computers and robots.
Do you play video games?
We are playing a game right now.
Did you catch that? The robot was hosting a press conference. I mean, that's crazy, right? It was even taking impromptu questions. It wasn't programmed with any set of answers. It was listening to the questions being asked, and here it was, answering with intuition. It might all remind you of something out of the Jetsons a bit, right? The problems I talked about earlier, about computers not being smart enough to handle tasks that are second nature to people, that's being solved right now. Because that truly unlocks some ways technology actually improves our lives, right? I mean, the reason the creators of the Jetsons dreamed up all this stuff was because it was the future people wanted. It's kind of whimsical, of course, but the bottom line is Jetsons technology makes lives easier. And we've got a future that's pretty advanced in its own ways, but it's complex in the wrong ways. More technology means more user manuals, more things breaking, more things to keep up with. Bah! But again, that's about to change because after 50 years of computers being faster but not smarter, they're finally getting smarter. Cars that drive themselves while we relax, robots that actually clean our homes, and futuristic entertainment. It's all coming to market in ways you can already see. Stories like Tesla's car launch is the kind of thing that leads off the nightly news, right? I follow technology for a living, and these advances have even shocked me. Ideas that were impossible mere years ago are being solved at unprecedented rates, and I'm sure you feel it too. Something big is brewing. Formerly kind of weird technology is hitting mainstream. The trillion-dollar question is, what is it? And I suppose I haven't introduced myself yet. You might be familiar with me. My name is Eric Bleeker, and I've worked in all things technology at The Motley Fool since 2008. You can see some of my accomplishments on this slide. My producer whipped up for me in the PR industry. I think they call it a brag sheet, but no one likes bragging about themselves, so I'll move past this slide as quickly as possible because the story of uncovering Tier 0, it's not about me. It's about my boss, Motley Fool co-founder and Rule Breakers advisor David Gardner. You see, I think he had some sort of call it sixth sense for these technology changes that he's developed over several decades. A history of making early calls before the masses catch on to the next big thing. And early last year, he began asking some very hard questions. He saw these changes happening, and since there's a deeper trend that these seemingly unrelated advancements, well, they had, let's just call it a deeper fabric. He sensed that underlying technology was driving these seemingly unrelated breakthroughs, and it was building to what could be the biggest technology trend of our lifetime. And he wanted to have an investment plan ready so we could anticipate future breakthroughs and issue stock recommendations in front of them. And I knew to get the answers I needed to answer David's questions, there's only one place to get the inside story. So I started looking down my list of contacts, and hey, where else? Silicon Valley, because the Motley Fool's reach has its perks. I've written more than 2,000 articles that have been read by more than 23 million investors. I write a column each week that goes out to about 1.7 million readers. So when I make calls, people realize the value of that reach. And let's be frank here, if I want access, more often than not, I'm going to get it. So I built a trip to talk to the companies I thought would have answers on what was going on. But first, I need to look at what building an investment plan across a major trend means to David Gardner. Because after all, the Motley Fool owes its very existence to him and his brother Tom realizing the power of the internet in its infancy. They launched the Motley Fool on July 19, 1994, and it quickly became a gathering place for investors on AOL. It was in this early stage that David realized the full potential of the internet and poured his wealth into growing the Motley Fool. And he's told me over drinks the story of when AOL executives slept on our office couches while hammering out deals for the Fool to manage their finance section. And well, I mean, you could imagine what it was like. And all this at a time most people didn't know the internet even existed or thought it was some quirky tech experiment that would have little impact on the real world. And David even went one step further. He began recommending the shares of companies whose vast potential he realized far in front of when the dot-com investing mania took over. He issued public recommendations of AOL on August 5th, 1994, and Amazon.com on September 9th, 1997. He purchased shares in each as well, and that Amazon recommendation came just 4 months after its IPO, and well, you can see the returns of those stunning calls on the slide. And you can see how David's success followed to the emergence of smartphones and our current mobile world. But, you know, the key point here, well, you'll learn along today's presentation, the Motley Fool is not Wired. We're not a newspaper. We're about much more than just information. We have a very simple purpose here at the Motley Fool, cemented across our 22 years of serving investors. We want to help make you a better investor. We're relentless in our quest to help make you money. Enjoy all the freedom that newfound wealth creates, whether, you know, that could be retiring early, could be affording the house of your dreams, or, you know, it could just be building the nest egg you've always desired. We're not covering this technology just because it's neat. It's not just a story. It's about helping you make money. Hopefully, lots of it. This is technology David Gardner believes will have huge potential moving forward. We're building a game plan for succeeding in a tier 0 world, just as we have succeeded in past trends. And again, look at the chart. David's track record speaks for itself. And finally, I need to add, while David is putting the puzzle pieces together on what investments you will need for a tier 0 world, well, the quotes above show its potential. This is potentially life-changing. Now, I need to take a few steps back and discuss that trip David sent me on, because it's where we discovered the true power of the underlying technology that is powering the tier 0 world, and also where I met with a company that's up 93%, which we'll give you the name and ticker symbol to in just a moment. If you're taking notes at home, you might remember I said this was the fastest moving technology I've ever seen at the Fool. So this is all evolving very rapidly, and you're about to see what we've only recently uncovered. And here we go. Here's a picture of me at the Golden Gate Bridge in July of last year. It's kind of cold as usual there. You can see the fog. It's covering the upper portion of the bridge, even in the middle of summer. Later we would see the fog lift over the area, showcasing the bridge all sun-soaked in all its brilliance. I wish I had a picture of that because I later reflected it was a great metaphor for our Tier 0 discoveries during the trip. But first, we've got a new slide here, and that's our first major stop on the trip to Google's headquarters. It's Google, so as you can see in these pictures, it's quirky. The company is full of projects in cutting-edge technology, but I was really looking for answers in one specific advancement. Little more than a month before we arrived in Silicon Valley, Google had revealed they had shaved the error rate on their Siri-like voice-to-text app from 23% to 8% in little more than a year and a half. And I know that might not sound notable. After all, technology is always improving. Yet, converting what we say to text on computers and phones has for a long time been one of those problems people are very good at. I mean, you probably understand 100 of the words you hear, but computers are very bad at. There's just no good way to code for the millions of dialects and words in the English language. It's a daunting task. Because of that, to put it bluntly, speech to text has always been terrible. When Siri first came out on the iPhone, I stopped using it because of how terrible it was at understanding me. Yet if you try using it again today, suddenly it's quite good at understanding everything you have to say. We started getting answers about Google's progress. They were using a technology from a secretive startup they'd acquired for a princely sum of $500 million at the beginning of 2014 to crack the code on speech-to-text at a dizzying pace. The biggest thing we learned was that even at a company like Google, they were shocked how quickly this technology was progressing. As you will see shortly, the technology was at the center of nearly everything new Google was working on. Well, it was satisfying to get answers on Google. They're traditionally the smartest company around, so we really need to get more answers. Was this just a Google thing? Or was it sweeping across nearly every cutting-edge company as David predicted? Luckily, that question would soon be answered. Because next up on the trip, we stopped by a company named FireEye, building some of the most advanced defenses against hackers and, well, other bad guys, let's call it, in the world. Here's me and their CEO standing against a giant screen of all inbound attacks they're battling at every moment. And it's pretty incredible, right? You might notice the attacks coming from China. As you can imagine, detecting those attacks is a cat-and-mouse game. It requires some very advanced technology. After a tour of the company's campus, we sat in a large conference room with their CEO as, several other executives were there as well, and they were answering my every question. And I was furiously taking down notes to bring back to David, our investing team. But what really caught my attention was when I asked, what's next? What's on the cutting edge battling these advanced attackers? And suddenly an employee in the room who was mainly there for his technical expertise and had largely sat silent, he spoke up and he mentioned the exact same technology Google was using for its breakthroughs in speech-to-text technology. So I might note, months after our visit, FireEye made its own Google-like buy of a company that specialized in this technology. After the meeting with FireEye, I camped out at a local In-N-Out to sort through my mound of notes from being across the valley. I was with an analyst from David's Rule Breakers team who I was traveling with, and we often travel together on these trips as kind of a tradition to stop into In-N-Out for at least a meal or two. I'm obsessed enough to take pictures of the burgers, see? But that day we were hardly paying attention to our food as we sorted through the mound of notes. We both kept coming back to that shared technology between Google and FireEye. How big could it be? How fast was it progressing? What further problems could it solve? And of course, what was to stop it from changing everything? We had one major company left on the trip. I thought we could get the answers we need from them. Which brings me back to that picture I shared earlier. Remember this? As I noted at the time, the true power of Tier 0 is within this frame. Still don't see it? Well, let me enhance this photo for you. It's there, right there. Off my left arm, it's the words deep learning. The executive we were meeting with had been writing down a series of notes on the whiteboard throughout the meeting, exhaustively laying out the advancements in deep learning, how the company was betting big on it for growth, and how it's the central technology that they believe will drive huge amounts of sales in coming years. A technology they're the early leader in, and the company's name is NVIDIA, ticker symbol NVDA. And they're up an astonishing 93.18% since we visited them. The market is up roughly 1% at the same time. And what can I say? It's kicking tail already, and I believe is a preview of the returns investors who get in front of Tier 0 can achieve. And I know that return right down to the decimal point for a very simple reason. After visiting with NVIDIA, I was so impressed with their technology that I rated the company to beat the market in our publicly facing stock picking database. So what exactly is deep learning, and why was I so impressed? I mean, the name doesn't sound exciting, right? And it probably shouldn't, because from the technology's humble beginnings in 1971 to very recently, it was largely locked up deep inside the ivory towers of academia. Yet in 2006, just a decade ago, one of those academics named Geoffrey Hinton finally cracked the code on the technology, and he committed himself to take the ideas out of this field and apply them to real-world problems. That's a quote from him. The real-world problem deep learning solves is the biggest one with computer. I mean, it's what we've been talking about. They become faster and more powerful year after year, but no one has been able to make them smarter at tasks humans are so great and they're so bad at. Hinton's innovation was to replicate how the human brain learns and to teach computers how to learn by copying people so they can be more useful in our everyday lives. And that might be complicated, but here's a simple example. This picture easily could be a 0 or a 6, right? The top is open, but like you, I'd probably say it's a 0. Again, this is a problem computers have traditionally struggled with. They needed to find exactly how a 0 or a 6 should look. Well, people, let's just say we get the gray area. So Hinton developed a way to have people teach computers. By having people themselves identify the right answers, in this case that's a 0, and having computers begin viewing hundreds and thousands of examples, they began to kind of learn, to become smarter. And this technology was first applied to handwriting with huge advances, and then as technology got better, it moved to translating speech, which is what we saw at Google, and eventually it recognized what's in a picture. In fact, it's gone so good that smart computers can now recognize what's in an image better than people can. And with computers now recognizing at such crisp accuracy what's in a picture, well, they can drive by seeing the world around them. Seriously, if you've ever been curious or if anyone asks you how a self-driving car could possibly work, now you know. That's the secret. Which if we look at that image of the NVIDIA executive discussing deep learning again, you'll see it right next to the car. That's exactly what NVIDIA is using the technology for, building self-driving cars. And the applications of this technology are nearly infinite. After Hinton brought his breakthrough to Google, they quickly realized the nearly infinite problems this technology could solve as it swept over the entire company like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Today, more than 50 different products from Google have reportedly adopted Hinton's technology. And let's just say this. A technology reporter from magazine Popular Science recently visited Google hoping to uncover exactly how the company was using this technology, and he just gave up, noting, and this is a quote, "It's difficult to lay out a concrete diagram of deep learning at Google because it's always changing, and I'll emphasize this, and saturates nearly every team in the company." Of course, we'd already come to this realization on our trip last year, that if some little-known technology had become the fabric of everything throughout Google, that wildfire was already moving through the rest of Silicon Valley. We saw that the other companies we visited, like FireEye and NVIDIA, and with technology becoming the foundation of our cars, our jobs, and even our homes, we knew that deep learning would soon be the fabric across the entire world, the foundation of a Tier 0 investing world. That's exactly what David Gardner had theorized before sending us on the trip. So you might say to yourself, is that it? Is this Tier 0 investing just deep learning? The answer to that is an emphatic no. Tier 0 is a much larger idea. because the name Tier 0 itself is something we've been using internally as a code word for identifying the most revolutionary investments in the space. But its origins are actually traced back to an idea of the final phase of technology established way back in, well, would you believe, in the 1960s? Here's how it was described in a popular technology trade magazine. One name I like and still do is Tier 0 devices. This term has a long history in computing, dating all the way back to mainframes in the 60s and 70s. The name Tier 0 was originally used to describe any computing device smaller than a desktop or smartphone with the main task of embedded processing of real-time events related to controlling devices. And that gets a little wonky at the end. We've obviously modified the term a little to fit how technology has progressed since then. But the key idea here, Tier 0 is a much larger idea, something beyond the age of smartphones, a kind of final evolution of technology that's been whispered about for decades. Deep learning itself was, well, let's call it the final puzzle piece to making Tier 0 a reality. Consider the internet, which David had been the forefront of. If you want to make a bundle investing from the rise of the internet, the most literal way to do so back in the early 1990s would have been to buy all the companies layering down the special wiring for it, building the equipment that moves data across the earth. I mean, that's what the internet is, right? We all used computers before it existed, and there was plenty of data. The internet was just a way of moving around the world. But as we all know, an idea as big as the internet is really a combination of a lot of different technologies. And you had to have some really incredible vision early on just how the internet would impact the world. So there were big networking winners like Cisco, but there were also the companies people first used to sign on the internet, like David's AOL call, as well as the companies that built the content and services that made the internet compelling to begin with, like David's early calls on Amazon and eBay. So you flash forward to today, and Tier 0 investing is our game plan for the full combination of technologies that will enable this massive technology shift. And here you can see the explosion of other technologies that are needed to complement deep learning. The technology is at its best when it has huge amounts of information to learn from. Here's a fascinating example. A Google self-driving car ingests so much data, it can fill up an iPhone storage in just 16 seconds. That's incredible, right? So we have big data companies, which is probably a tech idea you've heard of as its own trend, and that will benefit. And don't forget these smarter computers and things like cars will need huge advances in new sensors for detecting the world around them to make better decisions. A Google self-driving car has dozens of new devices to bring in all that data. That trend of billions of new smart devices will benefit hugely from the Tier 0 world as well. And I've got some estimates for the total market sizes. They're right on the slide. And well, as you can see, they're massive. And I need to be clear. We believe the time to get investing in Tier 0 is today. It's very urgent. If history is any indication, by failing to act today, you could be risking leaving huge returns on the table. Allow me to explain. Here's a picture I took 6 months after that trip to NVIDIA. It's of their CEO at an industry event I was invited to in Las Vegas. That grainy graph in the background, it might not look like much, but illustrates how many trillions of dollars could be at stake in the coming years, because it shows how wildly the company surpassed even its own expectations after I visited them. As recently as July when I visited, their deep learning cars could recognize 40% of the objects their cameras captured. And remember what I mentioned earlier, that for as complicated as self-driving cars sound, they're basically just using cameras to capture the world around them. The more they can identify, the more safe and reliable they are. But that 40% level was the result of years of work, and it's impressive, but I wouldn't want a car to steer for me that couldn't identify more than half of the stuff around me. But just 6 months later at this January event, their cars can now identify 90% of the world around them, which illustrates a key point. I call deep learning the most unstoppable technology I've ever seen, which allow me to explain because deep learning works on more information. Remember how I talked about that 0 or 6 earlier? How deep learning might take thousands of examples between the two to begin learning? Well, a car might need to crunch billions or even trillions of frames to begin learning what different objects are. The only way to get that is to have a big fleet of cars out there getting more data from the real world. So you can see, like a snowball rolling down the hill, the more you use it, the more information it gets, the better deep learning gets. And in investing, we call this a virtuous cycle. And when professional investors find great businesses that have it, well, I mean, we drool. So if you see those Jetsons level products hang the press that we looked at earlier and think they'll take decades to have an impact, well, you need to keep in mind that snowball effect, because it means the technology gets much better, much faster than expected. And I need to be honest here. The big advances in the space, I now believe they'll be arriving much earlier than I could have imagined myself. I'm talking mere months ago. And let's keep in mind, history shows the time is right for radical shifts that puts trillions of dollars at stake across technology. Think back to the biggest events in technology across your life. I've listed them with their dates above. I mean, see the first IBM PC released in 1981, and it brought PCs to the workplace, pretty big. Then in 1994, Netscape released its first hit web browser, and that moved us into the internet age. And finally, the most recent radical shift was the iPhone, which, that was recent, that was 2007, and it brought us into our current mobile world. But the math here is simple, right? Like clockwork, every 13 years, the next big thing happens, which would indicate you've got until 2020 before the Tier 0 world truly takes off. But I have a powerful caveat. If you have the right vision for technology, you can cut in line and profit from these trends before the next big shift happens. Just consider the following. As you can see, even before these iconic products we all remember now were released, there were very specific clues of what was to come that plugged-in investors could have acted on if only they knew the right places to look. In each case, very specific clues became available exactly 9 years after the last breakthrough. I trust you can see we're at exactly 9 years past the iPhone. Which is to say, I hope with everything I've presented today, that gut feeling you've had about some big happening, well, we've now filled you in exactly what's going on. I hope it feels like the fog has been lifted and you can see all the advances I've listed above. Deep learning is the cut-in-line technology you can take advantage of now before its investors have scooped up the potential huge gains in coming years. Because I'm not going to lie, you can wait and still make plenty of money in a few years once Tier 0 is everywhere, once it's, as we believe will be the case, the foundation of nearly all technology breakthroughs. After all, if you bought Apple the day the iPhone was released, you'd still be up an impressive 805%. However, if you'd had the foresight to buy Apple early at the cut-in-line moment listed above, well, your returns would have been simply astonishing. A gain of 10,849% that will have turned every 10,000 invested in the company into more than $1 million. So how about we get down to business and discuss the best way for you to get in on this trend. Thanks for following along today, and I hope the information I've provided so far has been helpful to you. And, well, I'm sorry for being long-winded, but the truth is the circumstances behind this history-making event are fairly complex, which works to your advantage because while many analysts are drooling over the cash Google is raking in on these new products, we've shown you the bigger picture today. And I hope that after today, you can see why you've got a big choice to make. The Tier 0 world is coming fast, faster than I could have ever believed, but I've done the research, I've met with the companies, I've shown you the proof today. And I trust you've connected a few pieces yourself about how this technology is becoming the fabric across all of technology. It's the most unmistakable and powerful trend I've ever seen. That's why I want to hurry up to this point and show you a special opportunity from the Motley Fool. Because as I've noted, we're not just about telling you about some new technology. We have who I believe is the best growth investor in the world, David Gardner. He has the uncanny ability to see further into the future than any investor I know of, and the returns are the stuff of legend. And today, on the cusp of this incredible Tier 0 opportunity, we've created a special offer to allow you to invest with confidence along with him. Today's offer grants you access to your very own copy of our new Investor Action Guide, 9 Stocks for the Tier 0 World. When you rip open this guide, you will instantly discover the companies we think are best positioned to explode with this incredible new technology. And it's not just 1 or 2 companies, you get 9 distinct stocks, all positioned to take advantage of this huge trend. And remember, I'm sure if you wanted, you could go out and discover some companies with potential to benefit from Tier 0. I mean, I've given you a few names today, but it's David's proven ability to see a trend and pick the right stocks to benefit where this technology is not just today, but potentially moving to in the next 3, 5, even 10 years. And that creates his astonishing track record of returns. You deserve to get the full story about these companies so you can decide for yourself whether it's the right time to take advantage of the historic investing opportunity David has identified. And there's only one way to get your hands on this valuable resource. It's by joining Motley Fool Rule Breakers today through this personal invitation with no obligation whatsoever. That's right, I want to give you the chance to profit not only from David's picks for the next technological revolution, but also from every other recommendation that he's ever made. And I want you to discover for yourself everything that Rule Breakers has to offer without having to risk even $1 of your membership fee. You see, at Motley Fool Rule Breakers, David stands behind every piece of advice, insight, and recommendation he makes with 100% confidence. Your complete satisfaction is guaranteed, or your membership fee back. So David wants you to go ahead and take a full 30 days to have a good look at every breakout company we've uncovered. And then if for any reason you're not thrilled, just tell David's customer service team to send your money back. Up to the last day of the first month, they'll promptly refund every penny of your membership fee. No questions asked. But I'm pretty sure that once you get a closer look at what David's cutting-edge investment team is up to, you'll want to stick around and get the upcoming Rule Breaker recommendations. You can see some on this slide right here that have been huge winners, because believe me, the full list of Rule Breakers winners is even longer. But I've kept you long enough, and I know that you need time to think about this investment for yourself, instead of just basing your decision on what I've been able to tell you here. That's why I hope you'll take me up on this offer to get the full story on these 9 incredible Tier 0 stocks we've discussed, directly from David Gardner. Right now, this report isn't offered anywhere else. You won't find it on our website through an advertisement anywhere. It's only available through this exclusive offer. Normally, you can gain access to every top recommendation on the Motley Fool Rule Breakers scorecard, plus get all of David's updates and reports, plus access to the members-only website that archives everything covered by Rule Breakers for the regular membership rate of $2.99 per year. Given the returns I've showed you today, I'm sure you'll agree that's a bargain in itself, but because David wants to make absolutely sure you don't miss out on your unique chance to profit from this historical advance in computer technology, he's given me the green light to offer you an even better deal. One that allows you to sample everything I've told you about today for 30 full days, and then lock in the absolute lowest price I can offer today. Just click the link below this video to get the full details. But you must act fast because this deal won't last forever. So to join Motley Fool Rule Breakers at my deeply discounted price and to receive your fast action bonus guide, those 9 stocks to the Tier 0 World that's worth $29 free with your membership, simply click on the button below.